Hi and welcome back to Cheeky Crypto. My name is Nick, and today, guys, we're going to be taking a look at the on-chain data, taking a look at what's been going on with the inflows, the outflows, who's been buying, who's been selling, who's accumulating, who is offloading, all that kind of good stuff. We might take a little bit of a look at the daily charts as well, see what's going on with the price action and what we think is likely to happen next. As I get into the video, though, if you do find it useful and informative, smash that like button. I really do appreciate that. If you're new to the channel, then why not go ahead and subscribe, tapping the bell and selecting all the notifications will enable you to not miss another video update. And if you haven't yet joined us in Discord, guys, you're missing a trick. Check it out, linked in the description down below. It's a fantastic community talking crypto 24/7. It's completely free, and I don't think you'll be disappointed by what you find down there. So why not go ahead and check it out? Let's jump right down into this video, though. So yeah, we're going to start things off with the on-chain data. This is a good place to start. I may remove my camera here. It depends if it gets in the way. Let's take a look, right? So I'm going to have to kind of lean back a little bit because it's all the monitor all the way up there. Let's take a look. So up here, inflows since the 1st of January 2023 through to the 21st of May 2023 is 3.8366 million Bitcoin going onto the exchanges, and we have 3.8080 million Bitcoin coming off the exchanges. This basically means that we still sit in a slight positive, but it has come down quite a bit. So since the last time we were taking a look at this, we're hovering around that kind of 40 to 50,000 BTC sat on the exchanges, and that's come back down now to 28,000 Bitcoin remaining on the exchanges in a net positive way. This would be deemed still slightly bearish than bullish, but we have seen significant amounts of Bitcoin flowing away from the exchanges now. This is also something that can be seen just here within our net difference change 30-day average bar. We can actually see that we drop down below the midline. Everything above the midline is more Bitcoin going to the exchanges, and everything below the midline is Bitcoin going away from the exchanges. So we can see here that over the last few days, we start to see that Bitcoin is actually being accumulated and is being withdrawn from the exchanges. Bitcoin being withdrawn from the exchanges, I see as a positive because it has an impact on the supply-demand metrics, which may see the Bitcoin price action push up higher. Okay, so when you see Bitcoin going to the exchanges as in more inflows, we see that as bearish because people are looking to offload their Bitcoin. They're looking to sell it, more supply of Bitcoin basically available for purchase. So we see that as a bearish sign. So for now, we actually see in the last few days a little bit more on the bullish side than the bearish side, but we still remain in a bearish state overall. Okay, so we want to kind of bear that in mind. You can also see over here the Bitcoin exchange balance. So the exchange balance of Bitcoin, you can see that it's been actually accumulating on the exchanges since January. Since we started this surge to the upside, a lot of people were offloading Bitcoin on the way to the upside. So you saw a lot of Bitcoin flowing to the exchanges for selling. Fortunately, it seemed to be the larger institutional players, the smart money, that were loading up the exchanges and selling their Bitcoin off to retail investors. Now prices coming down, you tend to find the opposite. So we won't talk about the hodl waves. I don't think I updated this recently. No, this is still March. I haven't updated that section. I am working on creating some new reports for our new website, for our members and stuff like that, and there's going to be so much more data. So do watch out for that when that launches. For more details on that, join us down in Discord if you haven't done so already. That's where I'll be posting most of the updates. When we take a look at the line graphs for the inflows and the outflows, we can see here, this is 2023, right? We can see since the 1st of January, we kind of see this, everything's kind of been matched up quite well, but we did have this spike up here. This is pretty much the significant surge of outflows. It pretty much happened all on one day, and that's and everything else is really reasonably balanced. So this is where we had 48,000 Bitcoin leave the exchanges, with only 24,000 going onto the exchanges. Since then, though, everything has been matched up again. So this is an unusual spike. We see these from time to time. It doesn't distract us too much, but what happens next will be interesting for sure. So we'll keep a close eye, as we always do, on the inflows and the outflows. Now, just to kind of highlight, we were at 3.83 million going onto the exchanges and 3.80 million coming off the exchanges in 2023. In the previous kind of start of the bullish cycle, so 2019, as in January 2019, and I'm just going to adjust this to make sure that we have the right date because we have moved on since I last did the update. So we're going to talk 21st of May. apply that. There we go. We've got the extra data. And this is 7 million versus 7.1 million. So we can see that there's more going away from the exchanges than is going onto the exchanges, so slightly more bullish. The volumes are significantly higher at 7 million versus our 3.8 million. Okay, so we're catching up a little bit, but it's still very, very insignificant amounts of Bitcoin moving around in 2023 than what we see in 2019. We go back further, and again, I'm just going to adjust this to include the most recent data. So I'm going to pull this to the 21st of May, add the extra bit in here. You can see that this is actually hovering on 4.83 and 4.73 million. And this is 2015. Okay, so we know that we are lower now in terms of amount of Bitcoin moving around than what was in 2015 and 2019. So we are very much on the back end of this. There's not that many people really participating, definitely not large institutional investors really participating. And so what we generally find here is that there's a little bit of retail money coming in, but the amount of Bitcoin moving around is significantly lower than what it had been previously. There are some arguments out there that people say that, you know, the cost of Bitcoin now versus the cost of Bitcoin back in 2019 is vastly different, and I agree with you. But also we have to kind of look and say, okay, well, in 2019, the cost of Bitcoin was significantly more than it was in 2015, yet that doesn't support the narrative that people are investing less. What you have to kind of understand here is that people are going through cycle to cycle to cycle, and they are basically buying low and selling high, buying low and selling high. So in 2018, they sold at $20,000 Bitcoin, for example. Let's say they got the top. Let's say it was $18,000. Doesn't really matter. And then they go and buy back down at $3,000 or $4,000 Bitcoin. Well, yeah, they're able to buy a lot more Bitcoin with their money than they had originally, right? So over time, it compounds and becomes bigger. So the volume in Bitcoin is, in my opinion, expected to grow with the number of different participants and the fact that people have been kind of going from cycle to cycle to cycle. So the expectation here is that these institutional players, the smart funds, essentially are driving large volumes of Bitcoin, should be accruing more Bitcoin every cycle, every bullish market and bearish market and so forth. And so when we see lower volume like this, it just tells me that maybe this bearish cycle just isn't over, and actually we've got to come down lower before we see those increases in volume really come in to kick back in. So that's just taking a look at the inflows and the outflows and trying to understand what's going on there across these various different movements and cycles. Now, when we take a look at the wallet counts, this becomes quite interesting because we do see a lot of retail investors really coming in FOMO, basically, you know, accumulating a lot of BTC. And at some point, you know, when the recession really does hit hard, we're going to see a lot more jobs get lost, and we're already seeing a lot of jobs already being lost. But I do think there's going to be a massive shakeout of retail investors, and it's not going to be because they want to sell or that they're afraid that Bitcoin's going to zero. I don't think it's any of those things. I think it's going to literally just be we need to keep a roof over the heads of their family, or they need to put food on the table. And I think it's going to have to be, what do you do? Do you kind of sell up your house, or do you sell your Bitcoin? And I think it's going to be a necessity at some point in the future. I don't know when, but I do suspect that the dial of pain is going to be turned up, and we're going to see retail investors getting shaken out. Now, it's not going to be all of them, but I'm expecting a large chunk. So, for example, here, Bitcoin Dust. These are wallets that have over 0.01 Bitcoin in their wallet. And it has to be over 0.01 Bitcoin, right? So it can't be under, but can be over. They can have a whale included in this wallet count data. Now you can see this is slowly tipping down, right? It's kind of reaching a plateau. We've seen some shakeouts in the past, but we're starting to see a little bit of a shake here, okay? And there are 12 million wallets that have over 0.01 Bitcoin in them. Moving over into the retail side, with 3 different retail size wallets here, you can see these guys are just on the up, right? Heavily accumulating. They believe the bottom is in, the bull market has started, the bear market is over, and they've been accumulating this entire pump to the upside. They've been buying premium price Bitcoin, essentially, is kind of how I look at it. You can see a little bit of a shakeout here on the Krill side. This is 0.1 Bitcoin, and they're currently rocking at about 4.3 million wallets, but they are still, you know, heavily accumulating overall in the last 90 days. You can kind of see this. The shrimps have hit over 1 million wallets, and I do suspect that this is going to have to drop down towards the 700,000 wallets at some point, and 1 Bitcoin or more. 1 Bitcoin is essentially a great aspiration, but I do expect that there's probably going to be more downward pressure on price, which is going to create a huge shakeout for the shrimp investors. You can already see that the high net worth individuals that have over 10 Bitcoin are starting to get shaken out of the space again. You can kind of see this here. they're not so convinced, and they are offloading at the moment, and you can kind of see it right in there. So from retail investors, these are probably the ones that I'm looking at to see whether they are going to succumb to selling pressure. Now, one of the things that we have to kind of consider here is that if someone's buying, then someone is selling, and if someone is selling, someone else is buying, right? There isn't like make-believe Bitcoin somewhere that you are just buying it from. You don't generally buy it from the exchanges, not in the sense that the exchange is holding all this Bitcoin and you're just buying it directly from them. I mean, you can, but it's very unusual that that kind of activity occurs. What you tend to find is that you're being matched up with other participants, other sellers of Bitcoin. Okay, so if you want to buy Bitcoin, then you're going to put your order into an order book, and someone who's looking to sell their Bitcoin is going to put their sell order into an order book, and when those two numbers match up, then the transaction, it happens, and the exchange takes commission on facilitating the trade. Now, sometimes those exchanges can, of course, put their own Bitcoin into the order books and offload Bitcoin and buy Bitcoin and all those kind of things. It happens. You see this from time to time, and it's not unusual. But to think that you're buying it directly from the exchange every single time you're buying Bitcoin, that doesn't really fly. What you have to understand is that someone is buying and someone is selling. There's a finite amount of Bitcoin. You can't just make it out of thin air unless, of course, you're talking synthetics. And some exchanges in the past have been caught basically just selling synthetic Bitcoin rather than real Bitcoin. And likewise, you deposit real Bitcoin and you get accredited as synthetic Bitcoin instead. And obviously, then they can close their doors and make a run. We've seen this, I think, back in 2000 and I want to say 15 or 16. Some Canadian exchange did that. So be really cautious with that. Make sure you do your due diligence on the exchanges and all that kind of stuff. I personally like BitGet. Pretty much using BitGet solely now for my spot and my leverage trading. I use 𝗕𝗘𝗪𝗔𝗥𝗘 occasionally if BitGet doesn't have my assets. I use Coinbase for onboarding, offboarding, and sometimes I use Binance as well. But my reliance on Binance at the moment has actually gone down quite a bit. DEXs are good, but we kind of get into all that kind of stuff. Nonetheless, Bitcoin, back to it. If we see retail investors buying here, then someone, of course, is selling. And that's really where the larger institutional players are really coming in here. Now, on the 90-day view, what do we really see? Well, we only see really these large 10,000 Bitcoin or more wallets offloading their BTC, which is pretty sizable amounts of Bitcoin coming off of these guys. I mean, you can see up here, there were 121 wallets. They come down all the way to 115. They bounce up again. And then they've dropped back down here once again down to 116 wallets, currently on 117. There's 117 wallets that have over 10,000 Bitcoin in there, each of those wallets. They started to sell off a little bit. Now, whilst that is happening, you can also see that the whales with over 1,000 Bitcoin is increasing. So the number of wallets that have over 1,000 Bitcoins on the increase, as we see a decrease with wallets that have over 10,000 Bitcoin in them. This is not to say that they come out of this Kraken-sized wallet and automatically just get added into here, because this is all about inclusive analysis. This is basically over 1,000 Bitcoin and this is over 10,000 Bitcoin. That means that the Kraken-sized wallet is already included in the whales with 1,000 Bitcoin or more, okay? They're already there. So a decrease here does not automatically increase your whale count, okay? And so we're seeing new players entering into the 1,000 Bitcoin wallet holder area. Okay, now you could, of course, say that one of these wallets gets split down into 10 of these smaller wallets. That could happen. Then you could see an increase here, for example, and a decrease here. But for the most part, that's not really what I think is going on. What I think is actually going on here is that there's an accumulation occurring, and this is coming down as our Krakens are selling. It's coming into these wallets over here, and at the same time as our Dolphins are selling as well. Okay, if I come back over to our 10 Bitcoin or more, you can see there's a slight decrease here. So one of the things we have to understand is that a wallet can have 999 Bitcoin and not be included in our whale count. They accrue 1 Bitcoin and then they're included in here. So we need to be aware that, there's going to be some ranging issues, but for the most part, we can see these going up. But this is, of course, only on the last 90 days. If we scale this out further, we can actually get a better idea as to kind of what we think is going on. Okay, so if we take a look at the Kraken-sized wallet over the last 365 days, we can see that they've been accumulating during this bear market. They've been buying up every pump and dump all the way through June, July, November, and all the way up to where we are now in May. And then we can start to see that they're coming down a little bit. Our whales, on the other hand, have been doing nothing but offloading. They've been offloading into the June lows. They were offloading all the way through into the August area, offloading during September, November, and they were even selling the November lows. Okay, and they continue to kind of have this selling pressure. Although we can see there's a slight move to the upside at the moment as prices come down here, I don't think that this is actually going to be overly too promising longer term. We haven't seen those significant surges that we are looking for here. Ultimately, really what we want to do is we want to see a significant downward move with retail investors and a significant move to the upside when it comes to our institutional whale investors. If we take a look at our retail investors, I'll take a look at our sharks, which are traders, they've been bouncing around all over the place and just following the price action. Our retail investors have just been accumulating, no major shakeouts just yet. And so what we're really looking for is something similar to what happened in 2018, right? And that was that our retail investors eventually, after accumulating during the bear market, will sell off a little. Okay, not massive amounts, but there's a significant downsizing of wallet counts, going from 730,000 down to about 690,000. Okay, so we can see that there's a significant downward movement of selling pressure from our retail investors that have over 1 Bitcoin back in 2018 up and towards 2019, right? We can see that right in there. And what's interesting about this is exactly when we start to see a significant surge to the upside with our whale investors. Okay, our whale investors only really can buy and accumulate Bitcoin if someone is going to sell it to them. And so we need to see a significant shift in the dynamics that we see at the moment. For whale investors to be invested in Bitcoin, we need to see retail investors selling their Bitcoin. Now, from the Kraken-sized wallet, this is what happened previously. 10,000 Bitcoin or more per wallet. They accumulated during the bear market, and then they flooded the system, flooded the markets with excess Bitcoin, dragging the price down into the actual bear market bottom. Now, this is no guarantee that they do this, but I suspect they probably will because the patterns are very, very similar. They were basically buying up everything, during this kind of 2018 bear market, and basically just taking advantage of liquidity and accumulating as much as possible. This is pure manipulation of price action because they're able to kind of drive price and wherever they need it to go, and then flood the market, bringing the price down into some crazy low levels, and then accumulating it again at a much discounted rate. Now, the question becomes, is this really driven from exchanges, market makers, or is there a group of individuals out there that are just looking to try to grab as much liquidity as possible? This is what happened in 2018. There's no guarantee it happens again, but it's an interesting point that's probably worth noting and taking note of. So for the most part, we're seeing a little bit of a significant surge to the upside when it comes to our current situation with whales, but our Kraken-sized wallets still bouncing around a bit, so are the sharks, and at the moment our retail investors are still looking to accumulate. So nothing major has changed here over the last week or so, just a little bit of accumulation occurring at the top level, which is what we want to see. So that's a positive sign in my eyes. Now, taking a look at the price action on the chart, so we can see that for the most part, we are just in a bit of a bearish structure, looking to kind of take us down a little bit deeper, and we're coming back down into our fair value gaps. So the fair value gaps here, we're kind of tapping into the first one. It kind of goes down towards 25k. More specifically, that 200 EMA is probably going to be good support for us, and that's coming in at $24,927. So I still see further downside here, a requirement for us to kind of move down and complete those structures, at least according to our Elliott Wave theory. Really, what we're looking for here is 24,937, and that will allow us to kind of look at this thing as a wave 1, wave 2, wave 3, wave 4 and 5, potentially still in play after that. Now, there's a lot of nesting going on. I talk about this in the morning videos with all the kind of micro movements of Bitcoin, such as 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5 coming down and trying to tap into that range. It's a bit of a stretch there, you can kind of see, but for the most part, that's kind of what we're looking for and where we're trying to angle Bitcoin to go to. Now, I think the bears at the moment do have control of the situation, so we want to be a little bit aware of the fact that the bulls tried and they failed to kind of get that closed position when they needed to over the weekend, so we are still looking further downside here. Ultimately though, fair value gaps I think are something that we're going to fill out. At least the first one, bounce from it, come down towards equilibrium at some point, and then break out of this idea of higher highs and higher lows and really come into a bit of a bearish situation. Ultimately, we're just looking for sub 20k. Doesn't have to be new lower low, but sub 20k would technically complete good structure, and we can look for reversals around there. I would suspect though, considering the fact that the whale investors were selling in November, that a new lower low is probably going to be required in order for us to kind of see the accumulation at the correct levels. So it's going to be interesting to kind of see how that plays out. Ultimately, rejection is still very clear here from our supply zone on our weekly time frame. Our weekly stochastic RSI is almost in the oversold area. I'm not too concerned with this, as our monthly is almost up into the overbought range as well. Our daily is coming up nicely, so I do expect us to see some further downside at some point in the future. But for now, I do think that yeah, we're going to be experiencing some volatility, I think, for Bitcoin. I do expect it to be choppy. I don't think we're going to just go straight lines straight down. I think we're going to be trying to create as maximum amount of pain as possible by grabbing as much liquidity from retail investors on the journey to the downside as possible. Lots of bull traps, I think, will be sprung in the coming kind of weeks and months. I'm going to leave the video right there, though, guys. If you did find it useful and informative, smash that like button. I do appreciate that. If you are new to the channel, then why not go ahead and subscribe? Tap the bell, select all the notifications, and in doing so, you will be kept up to date with everything that we do here at Cheeky Crypto. With all that said, done and out of the way, guys, I hope you all have a fantastic day, and I'll catch you all in the next one.
We are not financial advisors. None of what we have communicated verbally or in writing here should be considered as financial advice. It is not. Do your own research before investing in any digital asset or affiliate offers, and understand that investing in any crypto is risky. If you do, you need to be prepared to lose your entire investment. This video is for information and entertainment purposes only. All our videos are strictly personal opinions. Please make sure you do your own research and never take our opinions for financial guidance. There are multiple strategies, and not all strategies fit all people. Our videos are not financial advice.